Welcome. Today I'd like to introduce you to some of the advanced drafting module features. So in this site we have a simple roadway with an existing ground. You see it in 3D view, how it slices into the ground. Here most of it's in cut, a little bit of it's in fill. What we'd like to do with the advanced drafting modules is we'd like to be able to plot our cross sections of this roadway. So you can see that we have in our Project Explorer, we have alignment, we have a corridor set up, we have some surfaces. So we'll go to the Advanced Drafting tab, and starting on the left-hand side, we've already got our data, so we'll go right into selecting a template. The Drafting Templates command opens a browser to show you the different templates that are available, and for this example, we'll just take this particular size. It has 2 columns for the grid. We'll drag that into our project. That will establish the default settings for how our cross sections are going to look like. So when that's imported, you'll see now that we have a plan set. So a couple of new objects in this release. At the kind of the top level is what we call a plan set, and that's the entire set of plans that you might want to put together for plotting purposes. Within a plan set is a sheet set, and that's a series of sheets that have the same common size and configuration or layout. And then within the sheet set, we have the individual sheets, and that's what's actually going to get plotted. So let's just take a quick look at the cross-section sheet set. If we edit that, the program recognizes that there's not a corridor associated with these settings, so it lets us establish that. And now what it's going to bring up is a virtual image of how that would look if it were plotted. And the really nice thing about the way this operates is that as you go through and change any of your settings, so in this particular example, you can see that we've got 2 columns. We see that we've labeled each cross section with a station, has the cut area, the fill area, and several of the nodes of the cross section are labeled. Also, the slope of the proposed design is labeled with a grade on it. So the way this operates is through a series of settings. We begin at the topmost settings for the sheet. This is where we're going to pick out the sheet size and if it's portrait or landscaped. Right now you see that it's configured to landscape. If we change that, then it's going to show us what the sheets will look like if we swap the dimensions on it. So we don't like that, we'll change that back. It asks for the plottable area, so within each piece of paper there's only a portion of it that can actually be plotted on by a printer or plotter, and you get to specify where that begins and how wide and large that area is. And we specify what our cross sections are going to look like, how wide the columns are and the column height. And the nice thing about this is it's so interactive, it makes it easy just to refine your settings. So if you wanted to make some adjustments and say you started with your column width of 14 inches, then you can see, well, that doesn't quite fill up my sheet. So I can just window in here and say, okay, if I tried 15 inches, what would that look like? That moves it over a bit more, and you might try 15 and a half. That's not quite it either, so we'll jump all the way to 16. You can see, okay, now their cross sections are going to fall right at the edges of the paper, so we're satisfied with that. This is where we'd also change the number of columns or a scale. If for some reason we didn't like a 10 scale, we could go to a 20 scale. And you see the sections are a little smaller than we'd really like for this particular job. So we'll go back to our 10 scale. It just changes automatically. And the vertical exaggeration is currently set at 1, so we'll change that to 2 and give a little bit of vertical exaggeration. And that may change ultimately the number of cross sections that can actually be placed on the sheet. All those are handled and updated automatically. The cross section locations, that allows us to specify where those cross sections are going to be sliced along our alignment. So we can limit it to a portion of the alignment. We can include, in addition to say a spacing of every 50 or 100 feet, we can include HAL points and VAL points, as well as add specific stations to that if we had some type of crossing that we're interested in and we wanted to get a cross-section plot of that particular area. So all of the settings are arranged here, and you can just walk right down through those and see how each of those operates. And if you have any questions, just make the change and take a look and see what it actually does. So we were able to define what the grid is going to look like, both in the offset and in elevation, the two different axes that we're going to be working with. We can, of course, establish different colors for the lines that are going to be used. And the next section here is for the cross-section labels. We'll look at a couple that we've got set up. So what we're labeling here is the station. So this value here, that's our station. And since we're going to label it, we're going to use this text style. It's going to be offset from the lowest center point. So it'll take the lowest point here that it finds on the lines and with the center point, and it's going to be the origin for this piece of text. You can offset it from that. And of course, we get to give it a color and layer where those are going to be placed. Now, in addition to that, I've created a little table here. We do that by adding an additional type of label. And when we say, okay, what is it we're going to label? We can pick the little ellipsis here, and it'll bring up a dialog that allows us to pick a tag. The tags available here are area, cut area, fill area, station. And those are all dynamic, so they, if there's any change to your roadway before you create your cross sections, then it'll be shown based on the latest configuration of what the job actually looks like. In addition to that smart text that's between the curly brackets, you can put some static text, whatever you type of label that you want to have there. And so that's how we created this little cut and fill table. So many of the settings have the ability for the user to create multiple types of labels, and that would be done here. So if you see a delete and a new, then you're able to I've already created a couple here. So within tile labels, we have the option to draw it or not draw it, the surface that it's going to operate to, and a filter for the name. So whenever it finds a node that has the name of tile, then it's going to use this type of label. Within the labels, then, I've created it so that it individually labels the tie elevation and the offset. We'll kind of demonstrate that by using two different colors of text here. So you can see this particular label for the elevation is in the orange color, and I've set the offset to be in the magenta color. In addition to the text, we've also created a line, and this configures how the line is going to be drawn, where it starts from, and we've got an offset there from the point that it's working to, and the text style, how large it's going to be, and how it's going to be configured. So in addition to the time labels, I created a different label for nodes that have the text EOP. So the filter here is EOP, edge of paving, and whenever it finds a node that has that, then it's going to create this type of label. And so here's one on either side of the line. Here's one that's centered on the line and offset some. So many different styles and configurations, and again, any change that you make as you go through, you see that automatically on your sheet and what it's going to look like. For our segment labels, this is where we've labeled the finished slope here. And again, we have the smart text where we can pick out a tag. We can label optionally the length slope with the slope length. You see in this example that we've got it set that it labels the percentage, and then once it gets over a certain ratio, it'll label the ratio. Surfaces, in this example, we have 3 different surfaces. So the first line at the top here is the original ground, then we have clay, and then we have rock. And I can configure how those are going to be drawn by picking the color here. So if I don't like the cyan color, I might go with a something more of a dark blue. As soon as I pick that tab off, you'll see that the line color changes and now it's dark blue. You can also label the different materials. So you can see that as we come through, we're cutting through this. This is sand and it's in yellow. clay, we've got it in an orange color. And the rock, rather than then having a color for that, we've elected to do a pattern spacing, and the patterns that you can use are listed here. Now for each of the colors we can specify transparency, so we can lighten it up and make it so that other lines and things can show through. In addition to the materials, there are the material layers. Those are the finished layers, and in this case, wherever we have a finish, then we're going to go green. You see the light green line here. It comes through. That's our finished material. Could have multiple materials and subgrades. Those could all be shown there also. Now, there's a different style of labeling sheets that's used more in European with the drop labels. The very last section in the settings allows you to go through and configure what those are going to look like. We don't include that in this specific example, but again, it's just as easy to go through and make a few changes and see how it's going to affect your sheet. The templates that are in the metric sizes, those all take use of the cross-section table and drop lines and labeling cross-sections that way. So this is a real quick overview of how cross-sections work. In addition to cross-sections, then, we can also create blank plan sheets. So there's two styles of sheet sets that you can create. One's cross-section that brings up all the settings that are necessary for labeling the cross-sections. And the other would be a plan sheet that's essentially a blank sheet of paper. To see individual sheets, we'll open a new sheet view. You'll see right now we just have our plan set, our cross sections, and our plan sheet sets. There's no objects created on this yet, so this is a blank piece of paper. Here I can place data views on this, draw other things that I might want to see, and put them on a blank sheet of paper. When I'm ready to create my cross sections, select the sheet set that I want to work on and say build sheets. So now we'll take all those settings that we just established and we'll now have sheets. And while I'm in the sheet view, I can go in and look at any sheet or plan set. So if I look at sheet 1, you can see now these are objects that can be edited. And the coloration and the hatching is all there. So these are all static objects at this point. I can go through and add more notes, make more changes on these, but of course if I rebuild the sheets, any changes that I make here would be lost. We also have the ability to do the automated sheet numbering, the smart text, and allows you to pick up the total number of sheets and the individual sheet numbers there. So as I go from sheet 1 to sheet 3, you can see those numbers are automatically updated. And of course, once you have your sheets ready, and you like the way everything looks, you have all your labels and dates and titles and everything there, then the last thing we want to do is to either plot these straight away or to send them to AutoCAD. Select this command, and based on the plan set that we have, it will show me all of the sheets that are available for plotting. I pick the ones that I want, and I can send it to my printer or plotter. Now, if I want to send these sheets to another product, I can simply select them in the tree here and then go to Project Export, and I can export them just as any other objects within Business Center. So that kind of wraps up the overview. Encourage everyone to implement your own sheets and see how you like this.